And I'm proud to say that our party room has got to a unanimous position of scrapping net zero commitments by 2050.
Look, that's not something I'd have ever thought to have heard coming out of the mouth of a party leader with genuine designs on winning government. I may be wrong. I've been wrong before. Maybe this is a political master step, but geez, if that's the case, we're entering a very dark timeline.
We have come up with a well-researched, documented plan here that we think is cheaper, better and fairer.
Let's be absolutely clear here. The National Party do not have an energy policy.
There is a better, cheaper, fairer way for us to reduce our emissions and being able for you to have a job and to be able to have a lifestyle that Australians have enjoyed for so long.
If there's a better, cheaper, fairer way to reduce emissions, let's hear it. All they have is a single-page website. This is not a policy. This is ideological opposition and that's it. Their highlighted data is all of the correlation doesn't equal causation variety, and they attempt to falsely link net zero to things like electricity price increases. The only thing that the Nats have to back up their plan, and again this one-pager is not a plan, is a report prepared by the National Party's own think tank, the Page Research Centre, whose current chairman is former Deputy Prime Minister and Nationals leader John Anderson. I don't think we should be surprised though that they haven't put forward a policy, because in the almost 10 years the coalition were in government, they were largely absent on the energy front. I think there's a touch of irony in the fact that the only thing the coalition really put forward that even remotely resembled a plan when they were in government was their net zero plan.
Our plan to reach what will be our new official target of reaching net zero emissions by 2050, our plan gets the balance right.
Net zero is past its use by date. It's past its use by date because it's leading only to higher energy prices for Australians.
You see the household stress on their energy bills. They should be seeing every quarter Anthony Albanese and Chris Bowen's face on those energy bills when they open up, because they've gone up by 40% since we signed up to net zero by 2050.
This is a point that the media should be continually challenging the opposition on. They continually talk about increasing energy prices and the closure of manufacturing, and they leave people to draw the conclusion that the rise in energy prices is the result of pursuing net zero. But based on all the available evidence, this suggestion is demonstrably false. First, as the Australian energy market operator has pointed out, it's the growth in renewables that's putting downward pressure on energy prices. Without renewables in the grid, we'd all be paying significantly more for our power. Griffith University has also done modelling of what they refer to as the counterfactual scenario. This scenario looks at what would have happened had Queensland, which is rich in fossil fuels, had ignored the push toward net zero and instead maintained an energy grid based purely on fossil fuels, so coal and gas. Their modelling, which picks up from 2005, a time in which coal and gas were without question the cheapest sources of energy, runs through to 2025. Under their modelled scenario, if Queensland had relied solely on fossil fuels, energy costs could be expected to have been as much as 50% higher than they are today. You can go read their non-technical summary, which also touches on the second point that the Nats need to be pressed on whenever they're running their increased power costs talking points, and that is the age of the coal-fired power stations in Australia. As Griffith University highlight, the average age of the remaining coal-fired power stations in Australia is 38 years, and there is a distinct correlation between the age of a plant and the number of outages it experiences. In other words, the older it is, the less reliable it becomes. Remember, the coalition would have known all this when they were in government, but do you think they had a plan?
Let's actually look at the facts.
To throw more fossil fuel on the fire, many coal-fired power stations are losing their historical fixed-price contracts for cheap domestically sourced coal. As these contracts expire, they are forced to buy their fuel at prices linked to the high and volatile global export coal market. This is part of the reason we saw energy prices in Australia spike when Russia invaded Ukraine. That event threw global markets into a spin, and at the same time, many of the coal-fired power stations in Australia had their old cheap fixed-term supply contracts expire, meaning they had to source coal at a higher, more volatile price. The reality is that, in large part, we are where we are today thanks to the coalition's inaction. The fact of the matter is, there were a number of coal-fired power plants that announced their intention to close while the coalition were in power. Critically, many of these were announced before ScoMo waved around his net zero plan. Announcements from private power station owners all point to market pressures, cheaper renewables, ageing equipment, and unreliability as factors in exiting the market. Again, the coalition knew all this when they were in government. Do you really think they had a plan? If you want the TLDR version of why energy prices in Australia have increased in recent years, it's a combination of a few factors. As the old cheap supply contracts that many of our coal-fired power plants relied on to source coal expire, they're finding themselves having to pay the volatile global market rates. Our rapidly ageing coal-fired power plants are becoming increasingly unreliable. Coal-fired plants are also retiring faster than expected, either due to their age, in other words, they're too old to maintain and operate at a profit, or because they're no longer able to compete with cheaper renewable power generation. Like I said in the last video, I think whilst it may be easy to write off people like Matt Canavan as climate change deniers, I feel as though the Canavans of the world are something far more complicated and, in my opinion anyway, problematic. They seem to be operating one step back from outright climate change denial. I mean, comments like these seem to suggest that they at least acknowledge that climate change is real.
Now, clearly there's a link between carbon dioxide emissions and temperature. I've always accepted that.
I've always thought there is an issue here. There is an issue.
The temperature is rising. There's no doubt about that. It's happening in the oceans as well.
Statements like this seem to suggest that they agree that some action is necessary.
We're not walking away from reducing emissions. We continue to believe that we need to reduce emissions.
Now, why do I say that? We are not walking away from emission reductions. We are committed to emission reductions.
No one should forget, we are signed up to reducing emissions. We continue to want to reduce emissions.
And this is why I find their position far more problematic. In my view, it actually feels far more calculated, and I actually find it far worse than outright denial. A lot of these people seem to have more in common with your traditional, hey, I'm just asking questions type of skeptic than outright climate change deniers.
So you don't accept the science on these issues?
Well, is that, I don't know. Is that the science? What is the science then?
By framing skepticism as
I'm just asking questions,
just questioning, it allows people to avoid directly engaging with the vast amount of evidence and the established scientific consensus. They'd have to know that nationally there is an acceptance that climate change is real and acceptance that we should be doing something to address it. But what they're trying to do is soften people up. It's the whole, hey, look, we're reasonable people here. We know there's a problem. We're not saying we shouldn't do something about it, but, and there's always a but.
We're not walking away from reducing emissions. We continue to believe that we need to reduce emissions, but we've got to do it in a better, fairer, cheaper way for all Australians.
We want to meet emission reduction responsibilities, but we're going to do it in a cheaper, better and fairer way.
The obvious question here is how? Like really? If you've got a better, cheaper, fairer way to reduce emissions, let's hear it. But up until this stage, there's nothing that you've provided that suggests that you've got anything remotely approaching a considered and credible plan. Plenty of hot air and ideological opposition, yeah, but a plan? Nah. The overwhelming consensus is that human-induced climate change is a real thing. It's already leading to real-world problems, and these problems are only going to get worse if action's not taken.
It's time for action, not words.